Alright, time for another DraftScience video presentation where we go over it and over it and over it because people have a very low attention span and they don't have much memory space, and so they can't, it goes in and falls out the other side kind of thing. Their computer can't hold too much information at a time. Anyway, can't stay on the subject. Can't do a lot of things. So anyway, so I have to go over it and over it, apparently. So that's the obligation. So Zohar responded to my video. Thanks for response. Okay. Still thinking about it, and it seems you're right. So it's a little bit annoying, right? I mean, I should know what my own theory is. And, and it was so it's such an elemental concept that, I really should be given the benefit of the doubt that, oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right. Almost sure. Kind of, maybe. So, I mean, the whole idea of making a video where you're saying somebody has the answer and then you're, misparaphrasing their answer, I mean, turning it into a different answer, it's a little bit annoying. So the issue is pretty simple. I mean, let's make the round surface because that's technically the correct way to do the math. But anyway, so the idea is they're taking 2 point sources, and you're going to do geometry. Okay, so one of them shoots its little thing, and it's this length of line, and the other one is this length of line, and these are called the path lengths. And the idea is that for visual purposes, you're saying they hit the same location. But the truth is, they're not hitting the same location at the same time. Obviously, they're going the same speed, so this one traveling the longer distance, the distance being a wavelength of difference, right? The ones with a wavelength of difference have the same phase. So you're going to put them back in phase. And so the idea is you wouldn't conceive of them landing at the same time at the same location. The conception is that this one will hit, that will be your first wave hitting the shore, then this one will show up at the right period of time later and be the second wave that hits the shore, you see, and you're going to reconstruct a number of waves hitting the shore at the proper timing. And that is basically the idea. Now, I used the glass as an analogy for, the idea that to break the glass, there's only a certain frequency. So you can add in, in terms of a vibrational frequency of sound that'll add to the glass's wobble. So you can add, this frequency, the single hump, or you could add the double hump, or you could add the triple hump. Okay, but they all have to have the same endpoint. You see, the same. They all have to hit the surfaces at the same time in terms of to add energy to the system. If they're out of sequence, if you add a harmonica, I mean a wave that's out of sequence and ends here, it's not going to reflect at the right time. It's not going to add energy. It's going to subtract energy from the event of pushing side to side. That's what breaks the glass. As you push, you create pressure in terms of pushing the glass more this way, and you're trying to get the atoms further and further apart from each other. So the glass breaks because the atoms get far enough from each other to lose their adhesion, and that breaks the glass. So this analogy is what I'm using. It's just an analogy to say that's what's happening on the surface. Okay, so when you're actually hitting this surface, you're not going to just hit it and say photon. An event has to happen that creates something called electricity, and that's how we measure the photon. So the idea is something like you have to hit the surface, and you don't actually hit the same surface again. You don't hit the same exact location with your photon. So you know photons are polarized. They have a shape, so to speak. So the idea will be is that you're going to hit an atom here, And let's just say when you hit the atom, what you're really doing is expanding or contracting the electron. It doesn't matter which way you think about it. You're adding a little bit of energy. And that little bit of energy will be transmitted to the other atoms. That's how electricity moves. It's like you inject, something into something, and the idea will be is that all of them are connected, all the atoms. And so the next atom is going to feel that extra pressure, and it's going to share the pressure with this atom. So both of these, so somewhere in between these two. So one's big and one's small, you could say. And what's going to happen is they're going to mix, okay, and now they'll both be even. But they'll be bigger than the smallest atom was. You could sort of get that idea. And so that's what the sequence is going to be like. So when that happens once, it gets this big. Then when it happens twice, it's, this big. So you can just see it gets bigger and bigger as you add energy. So the idea is your the electricity moves at the speed of light. The force is going this way at a speed dependent on the atom. That's why different atoms reflect different colors, is because only certain frequencies can work for particular substances, because the size of the atom, that is the distance between the electrons, was going to decide how fast the the energy can move from atom to atom is decided by the type of atom it is. Different atoms move the electricity, move the expansion, move the energy at different rates. And so if you have 500 megahertz and that happens to be the rate at which the atom is moving, then you're going to sit there and take this medium size, right? This is small, this is medium, this is large, this is extra large. You're going to take the one that's a medium now, and now you're going to make it a large, right? And then as that moves, then you're going to hit with the third bit, and now you're going to make it an extra large. So this is an analogy. This isn't saying it's exactly this way, but that's the idea, is that you're strafing the surface, okay, like a little airplane. The photon will land in different locations, the elements of the photon, right? I'm saying the photon is something like, you could draw a photon in an envelope, okay? Very thin, okay, but it's very tall, right? And it's long. So it has length and height, but like an atom itself, it doesn't have much substance. Only a tiny percentage of that envelope is actual elements of energy, just like the atom, is a thing in terms of a size, but it only has a tiny amount of actual stuff in it. We could debate how tiny it is, because obviously I would argue atoms aren't that hard to hit with energy. So either these energy bits are big compared to the electron, or the electron is big compared to the energy. But one of those two relationships has to exist. And it'd be nice to have these as actual answers, and they probably can be deduced out of some of the evidence we have, but I only have so many hours in a day. Anyway, I can't do it all for you. But anyway, all right, so that I'm just attempting to explain where obviously you have some misconceptions if you think this is about hitting one tiny electron and hitting it 17 times, and therefore now we have electricity. It's more complicated than that. You don't hit the surface with the photon. You hit, you hit more surface. Photons aren't made by electrons alone. One electron can't make a photon. That conception of physics is complete nonsense. It takes numerous events to create a photon. Photons take time to create. They take time to land. They're not asteroids or something. Okay. I was thinking that having a higher likelihood of the force bits from both surfaces being received at the same time. So again, they're not being received at the same time. That's the whole meaning of the path length difference. Path length difference means path time difference. Means the force going one path will show up later than the force from the other path. If they start at the same location, taking the different paths means that one will show up later than the other. The whole point is it shows up at exactly the right phase later, the right amount of time later. Both sources being received at the same time would mean less light, since receiving two force bits at once would sort of reset the interaction with the light. The odds of hitting the same electron are a zillion to one. I don't know how to exactly say it. Let's say I took a golf green and I put 1,000,000 holes on it, and then you threw golf balls onto the green. The odds of you throwing a golf ball into the same hole would be really, really, really unlikely. Okay, but I'll probably respond with a video in a bit. Well, whatever. I don't, whatever. I'm just saying, obviously, there was a fundamental error in your video. That's important. You don't want fundamental errors. That's not, to me, it's not really debatable. So if you want to debate something else, that's fine. But this subject really isn't debatable. So, facepalm of the world, who is, ironically, like most human beings, exactly an example of what he's complaining about. I mean, he is the reason the world needs to be face-palmed. He's the cause of the palmability. He is a, perfect example of the assholes that make the world suck. This is his channel image. I mean, he's basically saying, I'm an asshole. I break things. I don't fix anything. I don't do anything constructive. I just make farting sounds. I'm a jackass. Flagging my life away. He's complaining that his comments are disappearing. Well, it's probably because they suck. Oh, shit. I mean, it's just the ironies are just so... hard to accept. It's bad enough I live in a pigsty, of just stupid morons. But the fact that the stupid morons are going, I'm a very good driver all the fucking time, and they suck at it, that's really irritating. But why does it flip from one density to another, and what gives it the will to travel? I mean, too fucking stupid. So the first question, okay, I mean, you didn't pay any attention when I did this and this. You don't understand that if I lived in a beanbag chair full of styrofoam bits, and I move my hand that way, that a bunch of styrofoam would be going that way. And if I move my hand this way, there wouldn't be any styrofoam going that way. Zero styrofoam goes that way when I go this, like this. But a whole bunch of it goes that way when I do that. So you missed that part of the video, apparently. Even though it's in about, 50 videos now. Fuck. So that answers the first part. That's what changes the destiny. As the electron moves, when the electron moves, it moves into more radiation. That radiation is now reflecting from an earlier point sooner to the rest of the world. So the rest of the world is going to get the reflection sooner than it would have, which means it's going to seem like more energy. Now, the will to travel question is just so fucking obnoxiously stupid. My obligation here is to contrast their wooey theory, wave-particle duality, superposition. The photons are talking to each other. Forces interact with forces. They interfere with each other, bang into each other, and cause all kinds of chaos. Oh, there's a random god who goes, poof, let's randomize where it's going. Oh, we have a Heisenberg principle that says you can't see anything. La, 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 la. Yeah, I'm contrasting that crap, okay, with an actual rational description of reality. That's what I'm doing. You have to comment on what I am doing in the videos. Commenting on other bullshit isn't the subject of the video. My only obligation is to provide an explanation that's more rational than their shit. That's my obligation, fuckhead. We can explain what's happening, but not why it's happening. So that's the whole point. I'm explaining why it's happening. I'm pointing out that the slits are the obvious explanation. The surfaces. Sorry. We have the effects, not the cause. Respectfully. You're not being very respectful because you're not on the fucking subject. And clearly, as I'm pointing out in the video, I'm giving you the causes. Now, I can't give you the cause for the existence of the universe, asshole. Why are there electrons? Why is there energy? Blah, 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 blah. I can't answer your little baby questions, okay, where you want to know why there's a universe. Well, we're not going to ever know that question. We're never getting that answer, jackass. What's outside of our universe? Mud. No, there is something. The fact is that the universe, is, it is something. But that's just as hard as to like I said, infinite nothing is just as hard to contemplate as infinite something. So what's the difference? Obviously, whatever this is, it happened because it happened. And the whole argument I'm making to you is that it's made out of just a really simple mechanism. There's two kinds of force, and there's two kinds of matter, and there's two kinds of interactions. And that's all there is, okay? It's really simple. It's a checkerboard, and it just happens that the checkerboard just happened to always be there for whatever dumbass reason. But it's going to be a dumbass reason. It's just going to be that the universe farts. And why does it fart? Well, because that's what it does. That's obviously its function. But anyway, so fuck this shit. Not on the subject crap. I'll just remove him. Alright, and then, this is in capitals. I mean, in bold. How can science have a narrative when its sole existence is tied to observation and study? So you're saying that the moons on Saturn didn't exist before we saw them. Or Venus, or any planet. Well, Venus doesn't have a moon, right? So, I don't remember. Well, Mars certainly doesn't, right? So anyway, no. This is just mush, whatever this is. This horse shit. I mean, the narrative science is giving you is a narrative of what's happened over, say, the last 10 minutes. Well, that one we can do really well, right? For the last 10 minutes, I've been making this video. I think it's about 10 minutes. It's actually 17 minutes. So we can go 17 minutes. We have a pretty damn good record of what happened in the last 17 minutes. And the fact is that we can go pretty far back and find footprints and fossils and things. And so we can tell a story about how the fucking thing works. All right, and some of this we can observe because it's so reliable, like gravity. It's so fucking reliable. It works every fucking time. And we can draw conclusions about its function, you fuckhead. Anyway. Funded studies have turned an art into a board game. I mean, an art of what? The art of voodoo? Witch doctory? What art are you talking about? What's your thoughts on NASA chemtrailing the sky over Florida? I don't much like NASA because its agenda seems to be insanely pointless. Let's do something as pointless. Let's figure out what the biggest waste of money would be, and let's do it. So, I mean, going to Mars again, for fucking what? What? You've already taken high-resolution pictures. You've already analyzed the stupid sturt. Fuck it. It's done. You've done all you can do there. There's nothing interesting going to happen. You're not going to find anything there. There's no fucking Martians, retards. Anyway, Florida for plasma science. They invited the public to watch its Aurora-style light show earlier this year. Again, yes, and you think there wasn't a proper environmental impact statement. So NASA didn't properly file its fucking paperwork to ensure that it wasn't going to irradiate you with some sort of special bullshit. That somehow the medicine wasn't going to get out of the bag. So you're so afraid. They're trying barium in a composite fog. Yeah, so you're afraid. If there's 1 zillion parts per whatever, and you're afraid. Because they're out to get you. They also say that chemtrails exist to block out the sun from global warming. Well, obviously there's some theory that we can reverse some elements of global warming by cooling the planet on purpose, which, is theoretically sensible. We could, throw a bunch of aluminum foil up into the atmosphere and it would reflect the light, and then we would get colder. So we could offset the effects, but clearly you want to offset the effects by canceling the causes. That would be the sensible way to do it. Curing the disease is better than treating the symptoms. All right. So you don't think any of those experiments are worth doing, though? You don't think it would be a good idea for us to maybe have a backup plan? Yeah, okay. I ish you not. I ish you not. Whatever that means. These are real articles you can Google. If you can Google it, it's real. I can Google dragon and find millions of pictures of dragons. Are they real? No. Oh, I hate you. Well, I dislike you substantially. Speaking of dislikes and substantial and whatever. So this other kook, silly primitive icons, his channel is basically a glorification of the past. The old books, old bullshit, old. I want to live in a little fake magical world. Alright, thanks for the comments. I think double stripe thing. So this is again this fucking idiotic obsession with the fake notion. Alright, I mean, I made it clear why this is an irrelevancy. And you're going to sit there and obsess because, see, this is the damage assholes like Feynman. Sorry, he's an asshole. Because this is the obvious consequence of his very poor description of reality. Is that assholes think, oh, what he's saying is relevant. No, what he's saying is completely irrelevant. Ugh. So this is not even. This is so fucking uninteresting. But like I said, it's a huge thing for the little common brains, okay, because it's stupid. But anyway, so as I've pointed out, you have to understand the experiment can't be drawn proportionally. I can't do it. I can't make this be very, very far away from that. So the screen, okay, again, that should be a curved line. Let's understand. It should be a parabola. I can't do that, and I can't draw this to its proper size. I can't draw this a millimeter, and I can't draw this, being a foot or more, where the pattern's going to show up. I can't do that. So I'm going to give you this fake notion that there's a light bulb here, and that light is going this way, and light's going this way, and it's all spreading. No, none of that's happening. That's the whole point of having everything very distant. So the light's coming in very, very straight. And this is incredibly small. This is a millimeter. And in the foot of distance, it's still going to be a millimeter. So you have a foot of distance here. Okay, 1 foot, and we're talking about 1 millimeter. I'm drawing 2 lines to show 1 millimeter. No, it's just one little tiny line. And all of this, okay, these 2 stripes that you call them, these 2 stripes are going to be inside of that 1 millimeter, you idiot. You're not going to see any 2 stripes. 2 stripes aren't going to be relevant. It's not going to happen. It's not part of the reality of the experiment. You can't put a detector here or here. Oh, I'll detect the photon before it goes through and see which slit it's going. You can't detect a photon, you fuckhead. It never happened. So when Feynman was talking about it, he was talking about it as an abstraction. Well, what if there was, we could detect photons and, we would change their direction and they go back to normal. So let's say normal was that stuff just goes right through here and ends up in this 1 millimeter. So, I can't draw it the way it happens, right? But let's just say it goes straight through here, okay, and straight through here means there's 2 little stripes inside that 1 millimeter. Okay. Now let's say I put a detector on here trying to detect photons. Well, obviously if I'm detecting them by shooting energy at them in this direction, what's the likelihood if I'm going to change their direction? That is, they're not going to create fringe patterns anymore because now I'm detecting them, so I'm going to change their path. So they were going here or here or here, and now I'm going to change their path by hitting them with energy and detecting them. Well, obviously, they're going to go this way, and this way, and this way. They're not going to go here. They're not going to go back to this 1 millimeter inside that 1 millimeter. They're going to get shot all over hell, and all in that direction, all with a vector in that direction. Feynman was making it up. It's not a real experiment. None of it's ever happened. They've never detected a photon in front of the slit or after the slit, but you can't detect a photon. It's like seeing where a Volkswagen's going by crashing another Volkswagen into it. You're not going to be able to see where that Volkswagen was going. You're going to see the piece of the Volkswagen over here. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see the Volkswagen. Hey, it ended up over here. How come? Every time I crash into it, and the Volkswagen goes over there. Surprise, surprise. How come it doesn't just continue going where it was going when I crash into it? So the point is, even if you could hit a force with a force, and you can't, the result would be you would gain no information from the event. It's not going to tell you anything. You're not going to be able to get a reflection at any rate. You're not going to be able to get this Volkswagen to go back. You crash this Volkswagen into this Volkswagen. Well, this one ended up over here, and your Volkswagen ended up over here. Guess what? I can't see that. If it doesn't come back to me, I can't say, oh, hey, Volkswagen, where were you? What did you do? What happened to you? I can't find out what happened to the Volkswagen if the Volkswagen went over there. I can't ask it questions. I can't find out. Hey, what happened to you? Can't find out because it didn't come back to me. It's physically impossible to passively, without disrupting it, see a photon. It is likewise impossible to passively see an electron. You can't do it. There's no theoretical way to do it. There's no known thing in the universe that allows it to happen. It's impossible. So anytime they say, well, when we turn our detectors on, or when we do that, none of that happened. It's all just a story they tell. It doesn't have anything to do with reality. And it ought to be erased from every reference. It ought to be, like whatever, Pharaoh talking about Moses, wipe him off everything, kill him. The stupid story of the fake story that there's any such thing as a detector experiment is a lie. It's crap. It's nonsense. And you being belligerently assholey by sitting there and pushing the subject when I've already told you it doesn't mean anything. It's not a way of proving anything because you can't even see what's happening anyway. It's impossible to see at this distance. You can't see that there's two headlights. It's like two headlights are coming at you. If I put them far enough away, all you see is one headlight. You can't see the two anymore. We don't have enough resolution to even see this pattern at that distance. So, I mean, you go all this, like I said, this trouble to explain reality, and this is the stuff that hangs these idiots. All right, okay. It is presented in this video with sand grains going through both slits to a tiny, tiny, tiny portion. Okay, again, so you're just not getting these proportions and how they're significant and make a difference. The only light that gets magnified by the distance is the light that's moving at an angle. If it's not moving at an angle, it doesn't get larger. The image of it doesn't get larger. It stays tiny. Okay, but the video didn't mention the case when photons are observed, so they're never observed passively without interrupting their function. At the same time entering the slits, so that never happens. So again, more false arguments. I have to constantly point out that you can't just keep using these, and you're not even paraphrasing their fake evidence well. They would produce double stripe. So again, this double stripe horseshit that doesn't mean anything. If I made two patterns, I have a pattern over here and I make the pattern, and I have a pattern over here and I make the pattern, and those two patterns are 1 millimeter different. That is, I'm making these fringes, and there's only a millimeter of difference between where one is and the other is. That means the two humps I'm making, the two, where there's a little bit of light, a lot more light, more light, more light. The two would be 1 millimeter different. They would just be off a little tiny bit. You couldn't even see it. It wouldn't be like Feynman drew it. They wouldn't land on the target like this hump over here and this hump over here. That doesn't happen. The two would be right on top of each other, and they're so close to the same that you wouldn't be able to tell one from the other. They're right on top of each other. They would produce a double stripe. They don't produce a double stripe. It's stupid, it's ignorant, it's wrong. All right, anyway. That would be the final argument for wave-particle duality. So again, this isn't the way. The argument that destroys it is that the math doesn't work. Their geometry doesn't work. Two-wave geometry doesn't produce the right answers. That's the final argument. That's the only argument you need. Young's analysis was crap because he wasn't even appreciating that the double slit pattern has two patterns in it. So he wasn't even explaining the double slit because he didn't even see the double slit pattern. Oh, God damn it. But as you said, this might never have been demonstrated properly. It's not that it wasn't demonstrated properly, it's that it can't be done. So at the moment, I'm very skeptical about the conventional double slit explanation. Oh wow. How interesting that you're skeptical. I haven't seen anyone explain and describe the experiment fully and in detail. Well, I just did, in my opinion, in more than enough detail to understand. Obviously, photons are composite objects. Obviously, they're made out of pieces. Obviously, the pieces are getting scattered by the surface. How they manage to create a single photon. So again, the single photon is just more right on the edge of just being complete bullshit. Okay, those experiments are always highly engineered. As I pointed out, the Veritasium video is a big fat fake. He overtly, right in front of you, concedes he couldn't do the experiment with the settings at normal settings, that he had to amplify and change the settings to make it work. And he had to do that because the theory is wrong, not because, like I said, there'd be no other reason. Why would you do that except you're trying to force it to come out with the answer you want? So he forced it to produce the answer. What happens in the slits on the atomic scale? So again, these are all questions, have nothing to do with my mission here, which is just to illustrate their theory is unevidenced crap, okay, and the rational explanation, it doesn't have any woo in it, and entanglement, and superposition, and ESP, and any kind of baby bullshit, okay, is perfectly viable. What happens on the detector in the atomic scale? So again, yes, it's important to understand there's no detector, there's a screen, okay? So you can't, you shouldn't use the word detector to describe detectors and to describe the termination of the photons as far as you're going to visibly see them either reflect or not reflect off of a surface. The surface isn't really a detector technically. How the photons would travel, well, it is technically, but not in general terms. How the photons would travel before and after the slit, and would the medium have an effect on the experiment? Well, again, the medium is irrelevant. We know photons travel in straight lines, blah, 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 blah. Do you take the fine structure of atoms into account in your model? So, of course, now he's going to ask a bunch of questions where he's just going to say, I don't want to be bothered doing any research at all. I won't even look in the description of the video where you point out there's 3 really important videos to watch. No, I'll just ask a bunch of questions and require you to personally tutor me. Well, no, I sorry, fuck you. One could argue that the scattering on the surface of the slits averages out, so their effect is trivially small. So again, it makes absolutely no sense. They're obviously average out, obviously. But quite obviously, less light goes out here than that goes in here. That's also quite obvious. Now, part of that's caused by the flat surface. So if you made a round surface, the brightness gets a lot more even. But it still runs out of light. So obviously, fewer photons get deflected by a large amount, and a lot of photons get deflected a little amount. Okay, so that's obviously a trivial fact. But there's no averaging out in the sense that, yes, obviously the light goes, it spreads. And the fact is that there's still an on-off pattern. And there's places where a photon reflects back, and there's places where no photon reflects back. Now, as I pointed out, there's energy going to both locations. It's just that the energy is not in the form of a photon. And would happen only if the surface level having no real effect on the end result. So says you. So again, the fact that the scatter isn't even is a fact. So you're saying it all averages out when no, it doesn't. And the whole point is that of course, yes, it's going everywhere, and there's where it's in phase, you get a photon back. Where it's out of phase, you don't. So it's like receiving a radio signal. I can do the same thing with radio signals. Do you think it's something other than jamming that's causing the problem? I put 2 radio stations here, and then I put my receiver in between the 2 stations, and then I send the signal out of phase from the 2 stations, and then I'm sitting here trying to receive the stations. Well, at this location where it's equal distance, the out of phaseness means I don't get anything. But if I move a little bit over here, then I've put them back in phase, and now I'll receive a signal. Now if I put them here, no signal again. Do you think there's something other than jamming that's causing that effect? I mean, realistically, there's no way for the 2 waves to interfere with each other. Okay, so clearly the reason is that I can't tune in the same frequency at 2 different phases. The receiver can't tell how to interpret the signal. It can't find the signal. The signal needs to be if you're going to have the pattern has to be above the noise, and if it's exactly the same strength as a noise signal, then it can't do it. All right, truly small, blah 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 blah. So I have now watched the photon gravity and energy videos. Oh, thank you. I mean, it's sort of annoying that you made this comment in that context, frankly, because apparently you didn't watch them very carefully. All right, did you speed them up? Yeah, that's what I did. Of course, I sped them up because people have a very short attention span, and you have to make everything as short as possible. So, yeah, I did speed them up because most people talk slower than our brain can listen. Most people talk a lot slower than I can listen. I can listen to somebody talking much, much faster. All right. They are hard to follow. It's physics. It's going to be a little bit hard to follow anyway, but frankly, all of the words are quite understandable. And it's YouTube. There's a transcript. YouTube made a transcript of the videos. You can just hit the little button and get the transcript, and you can read it if you want. I guess I need to ask a few things about them. I don't know. The point is to make counter arguments related to a piece of evidence somewhere. You obviously don't have a very good understanding of what is actual evidence because you think detector experiments took place and they never have. So, I mean, but that's all I'm really interested in. I'm interested in you demonstrating in some way that my perfectly rational, non-wooey description of reality can't be the correct answer. I'm arguing it is the correct answer. That you don't need woo. You don't need to believe in your silly woo-averse. Okay, that the whole thing can be explained as a very simple mechanical process. There's force moving the speed of light. There's matter. The matter gets pushed by the force, but the matter doesn't move the speed of light. So when a force is pushing matter, it's losing a little energy while it's doing the pushing. Okay, so for the period of time it's pushing, it's not going the speed of light anymore. And that's the basic function of the universe. There's forces that make the matter move to locations. The matter doesn't have any capacity to do anything on its own. It has to be pushed by a force to go anywhere. That simple model works. No entanglement, no superpositions, no wavicles, no bullshit. Waves are just an emergent property, just like they are in the ocean. There's no entanglement in the ocean. There's no superposition in the ocean. Okay, there's real atoms, okay, that are being pushed. Yeah. Anyway, I guess I need to ask a few things about it. Okay, whatever. It's fine. I'm just saying, it has to, what you're asking should be relevant to the questions that matter here, which is the contrast between their silly explanation and my simple rational explanation. But I'm not going to give you answers to questions that nobody can answer. Anyway, I don't know. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. So this other guy I haven't got back to yet, so I'll try to point a couple of questions at the physics PhD guy, student. But yeah, I mean, he's so lost in the fourth dimensional horseshit that I don't know whether he can do. I mean, I don't know whether he's any brighter than this other guy when it comes to the elemental stuff. Maybe he watched the Feynman video and he thinks they detected photons. Maybe he thinks that. I'm sure if you went out and asked PhD scientists, I'm sure lots of them will sit there and say they think those things actually happen because they never thought about it. They never said, oh, let's see, how would you do that? Oh, wait a minute, I couldn't do that. That's impossible. Yeah, see, they never even thought about it. They just accept the jargon, the bullshit, the narrative. Like I said, they never even thought about this stupid F equals ma, and the fact that that's not what Newton said. So they keep saying this is Newton's statement. It's not Newton's statement. Newton didn't write it in that form. Newton wrote force equals change in your momentum over a period of time. That's what Newton wrote, and that derives really simply into who cares what the time is. Let's just call the event. So it's the change in your momentum over the event. Well, the event is a 1, so we can just get rid of the whole bottom thing there, and we have force equals change in your momentum. So obviously the force is an amount of momentum that you took from the force. Duh. Done. So they can't even figure out that you're done deriving. And Newton was right. Newton didn't agree with 1/2 mv squared. It's not Newton's formula. It's not Newton's mechanics. It's not classical physics. It's not any of that crap. It's part of their woo. All right. So this is probably enough of a video. I do want to do the Stephen Bro radar part, but we'll save that for the next time or some other time. But just has to do with how the radar experiment gives you some hope of, because everything's bigger, so to speak, of getting through this bullshit and point, like I said, just this simple experiment I pointed out, right? So let me just illustrate that one real quick again, because it just tells you that this isn't about waves interfering. That's not what's going on here. So you can do this with radar or just regular radio waves. Now, to do it with regular radio waves, you have to do it over a large area because the wavelengths are very large. So you have to do it outside or something. Maybe. Anyway, so the idea is you're an antenna, okay, and I have two sources here. And the two sources, unlike photons, I can actually make two sources that are tied to each other. So they're going to send exactly the same signal. So if I drew the signal as a wave, but it's not a wave, all right, it's an on-off pattern, okay, on-off with a set period, a time. There's a time in between the events. Bang, bang, bang. That's what I'm sending as a signal. And I send the same exact signal to both antennas. So they're both in phase. Okay, so now if I'm sitting in the middle, all right, and I can put a sound signal on top of the carrier. So I can do an AM trick. I can amplitude modulate the signal so the loudness of the bang gets louder and softer, and therefore I can send a tone. Well, let's just forget that part. It doesn't matter. And that's how I can detect whether I'm receiving the signal is, can I hear the tone? If I don't hear the tone, that means I can't receive the signal. And so what's going to happen is, so there's no there's no wave interference theory here, right? I mean, there's going to be, if you want to think of these as waves, obviously I'm saying they're just rays, but whatever. And here's your antenna. Here's you at this position. So if you're right here in the middle, then it's equal distance. So they're going to be in phase. There's no phase change because I'm the same distance from this one. I'm the same distance from that one. I'm going to be able to see the signals because it's basically the same signal on top of each other. And so I'm going to hear the tone. And I just move the antenna a little bit this way, 1/2 of a wavelength. All right, and so now they're completely out of phase. Now one of them is sending this and the other one is sending this. Okay, so now I've got a problem because frankly my receiver is going to be seeing this, right? It's not, and both of these are the same amplitude, the same loudness. So there's just as much this as there is this, as there is this, as is this. So I can't see, there's no way for my receiver to say, oh, I know that this one belongs with this one and this one, and I know that's a signal. And then I know this is a separate signal. There's no way for it to know that unless I use a directional antenna and just point it at one of the sources. Now both signals are hitting, but I'm receiving nothing because I have no tuner. I can't tune in whatever this is, this combination signal. I can't see it. So right here I put my antenna and I get no signal. Okay, so no signal here, signal here. All right, now what's the wave interference theory? How did this wave interfere with this wave to create this destructive interference? Obviously didn't. So if we could do this with photons, which we can't, unfortunately. See, we can't tie the creation of photons to a signal. Maybe someday. See, photons aren't just like gigahertz; they're like trimillihertz. Okay, so photons are. We can't send a signal into something to make a photon. We can't make a frequency that creates photons. We have to just pump electricity and cause the material to burn, essentially, to create the high frequency light. So we can't create a high frequency light artificially. So we can't just pump electricity into two sources at a rate and cause photons to be created that are in phase. So we can't do this experiment with photons. But I'm just saying, can you imagine if we did, that the answer would be any different? No, the answer is going to be the same. You're going to get the same product in the sense that the experiment is really about phase. And if you reconstruct things in phase, then you'll be able to see them. And if you don't, well, photons, it's really about breaking them. So frankly, it's a different experiment. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that they say this experiment is the same thing, that wave interference is the cause of this no signal. And clearly it's not wave interference. Clearly it's just jamming. All right. So once again, I've done my job to provide reasonable argumentation. And you people won't do your job, which is to provide a reasonable counter-argument if you're going to say I'm wrong, or I'm incorrect, or I'm inaccurate, or any of that crap. Because you suck. Anyway. Alright. So, 48 minutes, yes, that's enough. Alright. So, till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. When I will continue to do what in hindsight's just going to look like, oh shit, I mean, look how he had to do this over and over and over again. Look how people just, I mean, it's so obvious, the right answer is so obvious. And they just kept trying to defend this silly, cartoon, nonsensical, fake thing. They kept gluing horns on goats and saying there's unicorns. They just kept doing it. Belligerently defending there really are unicorns. I don't care if there's a bunch of glue residue on the goat's head. Yeah, I don't care how fake our physics looks. It's real. It's good. I don't care how ludicrous it is that they never repeated the Eddington experiment from space with 400, not 4, not 40, 400 times better resolution. I don't care how ludicrous that is. Shit. So anyway, this has been a DraftScience video presentation, and see you next time, such buckaroos.